This edition of the Ridley Report is brought to you by WeUseCoins.com. All right, I'm standing here with Mark Edge of Free Talk Live, and you had something on your mind that you wanted to complain about. Tell me about it.
Well, I'm looking for somebody to talk about something. I'll be happy to do that. I'm good at talking about these things. I'm frustrated by the Republicans out there that are kind of looking at the Republican field. They don't know where to go. First they're voting for Romney, then they're voting for Gingrich. And they're voting for Romney again, and they're voting for Santorum, and they're all bebopping around as if there's not a candidate out there that's actually going to do what they want him to do on a domestic level. As if Ron Paul isn't the most consistent guy in Washington, D.C., and as if the rest of these guys aren't the same old thing. Do we really believe that Newt Gingrich is going to shrink the size of government? Do we really believe that Santorum's going to do that? These guys presided over the disasters that we currently have. And Romney, everybody knows he's a flip-flopper. And it all seems to be about Iran. Well, Ron Paul would let Iran get a nuclear weapon. There are 40 countries in the world with nuclear weapons. North Korea.
Yeah, how crazy is Iran compared to North Korea?
Right. And I'm not saying I'm excited about Iran getting a nuclear weapon, but I'm not excited about Pakistan having one. I'm not excited about Russia having one. I don't like these things, but
yeah, both Pakistan. Well, I don't know about Pakistan, but the Americans helped build the North Korean nuclear program. They're allied with Pakistan, the nuclear power, which is much more dangerous in many ways than Iran is. And of course, Israel's got what, 300 of them or so.
Yeah, they're likely to use them.
No one's worried about that, but Iran's got one, maybe, or might at some distant point in the future, and everyone's got their panties in a bunch.
And at this point, the IAEA says there's no evidence that Iran has been pursuing a nuclear program since like 2005. No evidence. So yeah, are they trying to enrich uranium? Looks like they're moving along the path. They certainly could do it. They probably won't do it in the next 4 years. But, it seems like this is the silliest thing to worry about, is if Iran gets a nuclear weapon versus, the worst thing about a nuclear weapon, and I don't want them to have it, but here's the reason, is because the United States will then consider them a real country, and then they will stabilize their government. Because the only reason the United States hasn't kicked the people and the crazies in Pakistan out of power is because they have a nuclear weapon.
Well, the other thing too is you want to look at history with a country, and as bad as the Iranian government is to its own people, and they have funded some terrorism abroad.
Sure.
They've never invaded anybody. They've never launched, like a preemptive strike, or they're not a very aggressive country outside their borders.
From a historical
although again, they're very imperfect and have done some wicked things in terms of funding terrorism on a small scale. But
I have no doubt they want to be a regional power. No doubt. Countries tend to want to have regional power. You can see China wants to do it. Russia wanted to do it. This is not uncommon. But at the same time, what does the United States have? What kind of moral calling do they have to be in charge of things in the Middle East? As far as I'm concerned, none. Seems to me that Israel can take care of itself over there, and that if you want a better economy, that Ron Paul's the only one to vote for. And I really find it just frustrating that anybody can support Gingrich or Santorum. When we can see that this is the weakest field ever. If you had a candidate out there that was clearly going to take it away, I guess I can understand that. But there's not one that's clearly going to do it. And just a bunch of big government Republicans.
Well, in a sense, though, you're kind of falling into a trap, or the trap of focusing on the national scene maybe a little too much.
Well,
because that's the part we can't control.
Sure.
This can be the parts you can control is more at the local level. Can you see anything that can be done at the local level to react to this situation, or?
Well, to this situation, I think that on a local level you can get involved in local politics and see what you can do to decrease the tax burden on yourself. As far as I'm concerned, there's government is an organization. The only problem with a government organization is two things: they steal from people in the form of taxation, and they demand a monopoly. So you attempt to break up the stealing and the monopoly on a local level as best you can, and that's all one can do. On a national level, you can't do much unless you have a nationally syndicated radio program. in which case I do. So I try.
Well, what could you do on the, like, suppose you got control over a town government or something like that. I had a class in college, back in the 80s called Hometown Foreign Policy. There was stuff back even in the 80s that people were doing to dissent from the Washington line on a local basis. What have you thought about that? What could
Some
be done?
cities do it. I think there was, of course, Brattleboro, Vermont is famous for having issued an arrest warrant for George W. Bush.
Yeah.
And
The
so
Swiss did that too.
What's that?
The Switzerland did that too, and it worked.
For whom?
Bush.
Did they?
You can't go there now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I was unaware. I think Nigeria did something like that too. But Swiss is part of Interpol. Why isn't Interpol looking for him?
Well, because he's George Bush.
Okay. It seems like another town did something recently. New Hampshire's trying to throw off the Obamacare, and that's great. And some other town did something quite recently too that was to dissent from the federal government. I think those things are great. They don't amount to much, but at this
We're
point,
talking about them. It amounted to that.
Indeed, but I think those are fine things to do. In my town, that wouldn't fly at all. Trying to get some kind of referendum to do this or that or the other thing. They're more concerned with filling potholes where I live. But there are places that you can get that kind of thing done, and I think that it's a value. I think it's worth it.
All right. Well, thanks, Mark.
Thanks.
See you out there.
Bitcoins, the world's first practical internet cash. A nightmare for governments to try and control. Inflation and counterfeit resistant. They return you some control over your money. And a new measure of anonymity. A lot cheaper to use than PayPal. You can use them to buy tax-free cigarettes. And almost anything else. I accept Bitcoins. So can you. Get started at WeUseCoins.com.